if you do succeed, let's say, in convincing Albany to raise taxes, and I'm a little skeptical that that'll happen, but let's say you do, there is concern, as Governor Hochul mentioned, that there will be people who leave New York City for Palm Beach or elsewhere. I know we're not going to be playing our little violins for the billionaires who have to pay more taxes, but they do take a lot of money with them. And in fact, the Citizens Budget Commission found that hundreds of thousands of high-income New Yorkers have left New York City in just the past 5 years. And households that earn more than $1 million pay about 40% of New York City taxes. So why dismiss concerns that your potential tax base that you need to harvest money from to pay for these things will leave?
I don't think that these are concerns to be dismissed. These are ones that I have to engage with. And ultimately, as part of the other conversation of how do we win over voters who haven't yet joined this campaign and this coalition, I have to meet with New Yorkers who are concerned about any aspect of my campaign. I have to meet with them who oppose with this campaign, because I'm not looking to lead a coalition of those that voted for me. I'm looking to lead an entire city of 8.5 million people. And the reason that I believe that we need to increase taxes on the 1% and the most profitable corporations is because of the fact that those are taxes that would then pay for a better quality of life for all.
But only if they stay.
And the reason that I believe that they would stay, because I want them to stay, is that when the Fiscal Policy Institute did an analysis of the top 1% of New Yorkers, they found they leave at 1/4 the rate of other income brackets. And when they do leave, they go to other states that are considered high tax, New Jersey or California.
I've seen this study, and I have to say I'm a little dubious, because we're talking about a major change in the tax system that would hasten departures that are already happening. Again, we've lost hundreds of thousands of wealthy New Yorkers already.
We now have more millionaires than we did in 2021 in this state. And the reason that I'm confident is all I'm speaking about is a 2% increase in income taxes for New Yorkers who make $1 million or more a year. And when it comes to corporations, it's matching our state's top corporate tax rate, 7.25%, to that of New Jersey.
What's up, family? I hope you all doing well today. So we got a situation out of New York that I got to break down because it's a perfect example of what happens when politicians put ideology over common sense. So you got a bombshell study that just dropped from the Citizens Budget Commission showing that New York lost nearly $11 billion in tax revenue, as you guys can see on the screen, in a single year, because millionaires are fleeing the state. 11 billion. That's not a small number. That's not a rounding error. That's real money that could have gone to schools, infrastructure, public safety, all things these politicians claim they care about. But here's the thing. They are the ones causing the problem, and they don't even see it. So let's get into it. So here's what happened. A reporter confronted Governor Kathy Hochul with this study and asked her straight up, how do we stop this? Because the numbers are right there. New York's share of the nation's millionaires dropped from 12.7% down to 8.7% between 2010 and 2022. And that's the biggest decline of any state in the country. And the study says if New York had just kept its shares of millionaires, they would have collected roughly 10.7 billion more in tax revenue in 2022 alone. Now, watch how Hochul responds, because she immediately starts pointing fingers. She blames Donald Trump. She blames the SALT deduction. She blames COVID. She blames everybody except the policies that are actually driving people out. And this is the pattern, family. This is what they always do. When the results don't match the promises, they don't change the policy. They change the excuses. She said the data is from 2022 and things might be better now. But we're sitting here in 2026 and New York City just ended an $8 billion bailout from the state. An $8 billion bailout. So no, it's not better. It's getting worse, actually. And then you got Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who is openly socialist, standing outside billionaire Ken Griffin's $238 million penthouse, gloating about taxing the rich. And what happened? Ken Griffin threatened to pull a $6 billion development out of New York. $6 billion. And that's what happens when you treat the people who creates the jobs and generate tax revenue like enemies instead of partners.
Liberal cities, because they want to tax everybody so much, and it's forcing people to leave. So look at the stats in New York. This is the millionaire exodus, they're calling it. Back in 2010, Number of millionaires living in this city, 12.7%. Look at 2022, and this is just a few years ago. I think that number is probably even lower now. Only 8.7% are millionaires in our city now. A lot of people left during COVID, but a lot of people are leaving now because this guy was elected and he wants to tax people making $300,000 or more.
Yeah, and these are people that are making $1 million or more that this study found. And look, this mayor, the city council, the DA, they haven't made it better for the city. And as a result of this, I think there's really no incentive to stay in New York. After COVID, a lot of these businesses realized they could be mobile, so a lot of them closed up their shop here. The rent prices are way too high as a result of all the taxation, and people just found Florida, Texas, Tennessee, better places to live.
That's right. And it's not only living here, LJ, it's also investing here. And we were just showing that video that was so controversial of Mamdani out front of Citadel CEO Ken Griffin's home, his apartment building. This is it right here. And he's blasting by name Ken Griffin, who's one of the biggest investors in New York City. But he also has headquarters in Miami. In his response to that video where Mamdani's hailing his wealth tax against guys like Ken Griffin said, okay, fine, I'm pulling an investment I was about to make in New York, and I'm moving that and spinning operations down in Miami, in Florida.
Well, these are not just numbers that one organization has come up with. These are numbers from the IRS and from federal data trackers. So this is real. New York lost roughly $11 billion in tax revenue in one single year. Florida, that's the premier destination. It looks like Texas might be number 2. They're fleeing because of wealth. They made $21 billion in net interstate wealth in 2023. So 3 years ago, all these New Yorkers or Northeasterners moved down there. They made $21 billion. New York is losing on average $11 billion.
So, of course, he's not taking accountability. The mayor of New York, he's just dismissing these concerns. Here he is.
You know, the first time that I met Councilwoman Carmen De La Rosa was when we were both serving in the New York State Assembly, and that was the year when we were advocating to increase taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers by raising income taxes on those who made more than $1 million across our city and state. And we were told then that if we were to do that, that we would have fewer millionaires in the years to come. And what we found is after passing that and raising billions of dollars that helped our state to finally meet the terms of the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, that we in fact had more millionaires than we had prior.
He's so delusional. I mean, you're dismissing the millionaires and the billionaires, but you want them to pay for all these programs. So you got to invite them to the table. You got to give them incentives. I don't think the wealthy people in this country have any problem with investing or paying more for certain things, but they got to be a part of the story. You can't just force things down people's throat and have us pay for it. I think there's this notion around, not just in New York, but across the country now, of punishing people's success instead of, achieving it yourself.
And Mamdani talks about his famous quote about the warmth of collectivism, which absolutely flies in the face of individual opportunity for the successes of guys like King Griffin and others that bring their money here to New York City.
So there you have it. Now let's read the article. It says, New York sees dramatic exodus of millionaires causing nearly $11 billion loss in tax revenue study. New York's share of U.S. millionaires dramatically declined in recent years, causing a nearly $11 billion loss in much-needed tax revenue in just 1 year, according to a bombshell new analyst. The study released Monday by Citizens Budget Commission comes amid fears that socialist mayors around Mamdani's push to tax the rich will drive even more wealthy taxpayers and their businesses out of New York City. Even before Mamdani took office, the Empire State's share of the nation's millionaires dipped from 12.7% to 8.7% between 2010 and 2022, the largest decline of any state, according to the CBC's competitive, value proposition tracker dashboard. So New York's declining share of high-income taxpayers has meaningful consequences, the analysis states. Had New York maintained its share of the nation's millionaires over the past decade, personal income tax collections would have been substantially higher, roughly $10.7 billion more in tax year 2022. Many experts and business leaders warned Mudami's stick it to the rich policy dreams and their growing success among Albany lawmakers could subcharge the drip of wealthy people. Governor Kathy Hochul has firmly opposed an outright hike on the wealthy this year as she seeks re-election in November, but backed a so-called pied tax on luxury second homes in New York City, which is basically property tax. Mudami gleefully gloated about the tax in a social media video filmed outside billionaire Ken Griffin's $238 million Manhattan penthouse, a stunt that infuriated the hedge fund titan and prompted him to threaten pulling a $6 billion Park Avenue development. The fueled fears of a wider exodus from New York, where the Big Apples and the state's bloated budgets are increasingly dependent on a shrinking silver of taxpayers. So there you have it, right? Getting into the economics of this, because this is where it gets real. Mudami tried to defend his tax plan by saying that after New York raised taxes on the wealthy, as you heard, before they actually ended up with more millionaires, right? So him saying just because they were talking about and planning and his whole tax plan before that he mentioned at an assembly meeting that he will be raising taxes on New York, supposedly they ended up with more millionaires today. But we just read the study, right? There is an exodus for a reason, which is self-explanatory, which is why you saw the Fox News reporter call him delusional. But here's what he's not telling you. He's not talking about raw numbers, raw Mudami. The total number of millionaires in the country went up during that time. So, of course, New York might have a few more millionaires in raw numbers, but as a share of the nation's millionaires, they're losing ground. That's like saying your business made more money this year than last year, but every other business in your industry grew twice as fast. You're still losing market share. You're still falling behind. And here's the part that really gets me. The study shows that households earning more than $1 million pay about 40% of New York City taxes. 40%. So when you chase those people out, you're not just losing a few rich folks, you're losing almost half of your tax base. And then who's left holding the bag? Working class people, middle class families, small business owners who can't afford to pick up and move to Florida. That's who. So the people who can least afford higher taxes end up paying more because the people who could afford it left. And the politicians don't stop spending. They never cut spending. So the deficit grows every single year and they borrow more money. And it's a death spiral, and they refuse to see it. So now here's the clip I was referring to of Kathy Hochul speaking and the news reporter confronting her.
Can we talk about the latest report from the Citizens Budget Commission? And I know you're very aware of this and sensitive to big businesses leaving New York City. Their latest report basically said wealthy individuals are moving out, families are moving out, and single filers are coming in. People who really can't afford New York City are coming here. You had to bail out New York City $8 billion this budget. They're saying they see a $10 billion budget deficit. What do you think? How do we stop this?
Well, first of all, the data that came out is from 2022.
Do you think it's any better? I mean,
no,
we had an $8 billion budget deficit this year.
Let me explain.
Yeah.
Back then, big driver of people leaving, and you could draw a through line from when the Donald Trump administration and Congress got rid of the state and local tax deduction. All of a sudden, everybody in New York paid higher taxes because we used to, since Abraham Lincoln was president, they started the tax code, you never were double taxed. They changed that. So states like New York, you lost that deduction. So it got more expensive to be here just with the signing of that law. 2017, 2019, those are the years when people started the out-migration of businesses and individuals. And then what happens in 2020? Gets slammed with the pandemic. So people who maybe had a vacation home or a temporary home in Palm Beach said, I'm moving my whole family here. I mean, the city's falling apart here. Everybody's getting sick. I'm not staying. So there's an interesting trend right that drove that factor.
You don't think that's a problem now?
But I am today. I am doing what I can to stop that because I believe that we should not be raising taxes on high net worth individuals. We should not be raising taxes on the companies that are creating the jobs and generating the revenue that helps us pay for the services that people in New York City come to rely on. So I've taken a different approach. I want to expand the pie. I'm letting businesses know that we want you to succeed here. we also have to make sure that all New Yorkers succeed. So this is a pro-New Yorker approach, is to encourage the businesses to stay. And we've had more technology companies signing long-term leases in the last 3 months than any time in history.
So there you have it, running into the Victim Olympics. But let me tell you what the takeaway is from all of this, family. The takeaway is that policies have consequences. You cannot tax the rich out of existence and expect them to stick around and fund your whole government. They have options. They have resources. They can move their money, their businesses, their families to Florida, Texas, Tennessee, any state that's not going to treat them like an ATM. And look, I'm not here to cry for billionaires. They'll be fine wherever they go. But the point is, when you build your entire budget around taxing a small group of people, you better make sure they stay, and they're not staying. They're leaving. And the people who suffer are the regular folks who can't leave. The single mom in Brooklyn, the small business owner in Buffalo, the working family in Rochester, they are the ones who get stuck with the bill when the wealthy leave and the city still needs money. And the irony is, these politicians keep doing the same thing, expecting different results, and they keep raising taxes. The rich keep leaving, the revenue keeps dropping, and then they raise taxes again. That's the definition of insanity. And this isn't just about New York. This is a pattern you see in every blue state and every blue city across this country. The same policies, the same results, the same excuses. Now, I want to close with some scripture because I think it fits perfectly here. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 28 says, "In the multitude of people is the king's honor, but in the want of people is the destruction of the prince." So think about that for a second. What that's saying is that a leader's strength comes from having people, from having citizens, residents, taxpayers, people who choose to live and work and build under that leader's rule. But when the people leave, when they depart, that's when the leader falls, and that's the destruction. And that's exactly what we're seeing in New York right now. The people are leaving because the policies are driving them out, and the leaders, the princes, the governors, and mayors, they're sitting there wondering why their budgets are falling apart. The scripture explains it. Without the people, there is no honor. Without the taxpayers, there is no revenue, and you can't govern an empty city, and you can't tax people who already left. And for the folks who aren't spiritual, the life wisdom is just as clear. If you run a business and you keep raising prices on your best customers, eventually they're going to go somewhere else. If you manage a team and you keep treating your top performers poorly, they're going to find another job. It's the same principle. You can't take the people who carry the load for granted and expect them to keep carrying. At some point, they're going to set the load down and walk away. And when they do, you're left holding nothing. So the lesson here is simple. Be wise about who you tax and how you treat the people who actually generate the wealth in your community. Because if you drive them away, you are not punishing them, you're punishing yourself. And the people who suffer the most are always the ones at the bottom. So let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications, spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. As always, we're having a conversation. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.